going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Today, I want to talk to you about X-Men Forever 2, Volume 2. Scream a Little Scream. Let me get that a little closer so you can see that cover. This is by Chris Claremont, Tom Grummett, Ron Lim, and Mike Grell. And this collects issues 6 through 10 of X-Men Forever 2. I am starting to lose a little bit of faith in this series again. If you'll recall, over the course of my reviews of this series, I was a little concerned that Chris Claremont was going to pile a whole bunch of subplots up and then leave the series with none of them being addressed or concluded. That's something that, if you look at his original 16-year run on the X-Men, sometimes it would take him several years to address a subplot that he had set up. And part of that might have been that he had forgotten about it, or part of it might have been that he knew he was going to be on the X-Men for a long time, so he didn't worry about setting up something and then immediately concluding it later on. He wanted to kind of wait and bide his time on it. I don't know why he did that, but with this series being comparatively a lot shorter, I was afraid that he was going to set up all of these mysteries and questions, and then he wasn't going to have time to answer all of it. And then you get to the end of Volume 1 of this series, or I guess Volume 5 of the first X-Men Forever series. You get to the end of that, and I was really surprised. They actually did wrap up quite a bit of stuff. And then you get to Volume 1 of X-Men Forever 2, and they're wrapping up more stuff, and I was really pleasantly surprised. And now we get to this volume, and this is the second to last volume of the series, and there's still a lot of stuff that I'm now worried that they are not going to be able to wrap up in the final volume. You remember at the end of X-Men Forever, the first series, we had this new character called Ghost Panther. He looks a lot like Black Panther, except he's wearing metallic armor. We don't know who he is, but he is somehow involved with the Morlocks, and they are forming some kind of an alliance with him. We don't know what's going on there, and that was set up, I believe, at the end of X-Men Forever, the first series. Either that, or it was at the end of Volume 1 of this series, but that doesn't go anywhere in this volume. We also have, this introduces some more subplots. Mariko, who was Logan's girlfriend back in the 80s, she has now joined the Consortium, basically because she's upset that Jean Grey stole her man. That's a really dumb motivation for Mariko to become a bad guy, especially when she was a pretty nice woman before. And also, if memory serves, Mariko is the one who broke it off with Logan in the Paul Smith run back in the 80s. I don't remember for sure, but I'm 99% sure that she was the one who ended things with him, and for no good reason. So it's especially dumb that here she is now joining this evil organization to eliminate all mutants because of the actions of Jean Grey, which didn't actually even happen in the original run. Now this series, this is not the first time that they've retconned stuff that happened during Chris Claremont's run, even though the entire premise of X-Men Forever is supposed to be that this is a continuation of Chris Claremont's run. So now we have Mariko working with the Consortium. We still have the Ghost Panther out there. We don't know what's going on with that. We have Storm, who is the Queen of Wakanda now, and that happened like in Volume 2 of the first X-Men Forever series, and she is now about to make her big move. So presumably that at least will be wrapped up, and I'm really glad that they are going to do something with that. I really hope they're setting it up like they are going to do something with it in the next volume. I'm really hoping that they do, because the whole Storm thing, which one is the real Storm, that was the thing I was the most interested in, and that's the thing that's been ignored the most out of the series. That and Magik being turned back into an evil version of herself, I don't think that's ever going to be resolved. But the bulk of this volume, I've talked a lot about stuff that's not been resolved yet. I haven't really talked about the plot of this volume yet, but the bulk of this volume is Nate, Cyclops' son, is living in Oaska with his grandpa. He is almost kidnapped by this woman who works with Mr. Sinister, and in this reality, Mr. Sinister is not a mad scientist from the 1800s who is immortal. He is a little kid who is immortal and went to the orphanage with Cyclops. And if you ever kept up with things that Chris Claremont said before this series started, but after his run ended in the early 90s, he talked about some of the things that he would have done if he had stayed on the series. And one of the big things he said was that he did not like the way that Mr. Sinister's origin was revealed. He did not like the whole mad scientist thing. He didn't like the connection with Apocalypse. He said that was all really silly. Now, I'm going to be brutally honest, the idea of an immortal kid who is evil and is pulling all these strings, that's also really silly. It makes sense that a child can came up with the name Mr. Sinister because that name is pretty goofy, but the idea of a child who's an immortal and has this underground evil organization working for him, that's a little goofy. Yeah, he uses the Mr. Sinister robot, I guess it's a robot, to order the Marauders, because if they knew that they were taking their orders from a kid, they wouldn't take their orders from a kid. Okay, fine. But then why is Dr. Hanover, why is she working for a little kid? Why is she willingly taking orders from a child? But anyway, she goes up and she pretends like she is, and I think some of this that actually happened in the previous volume, but she is acting like, oh, I need a flight. And then Christopher Summers, Cyclops' dad, is like, well, you can't go on a flight today, so you can stay with us tonight because it's storming out, and then we'll get you a flight tomorrow. And then that night, she goes into Nate's room and she says, I'm taking you home. And it's very sinister, no pun intended. And then the Marauders attack. And it doesn't make any sense because Nate should be old enough. After all of this blows over, spoilers, the Marauders are not successful. They do not actually kidnap Nate. After all of this blows over, Nate should tell Cyclops, hey, Dr. Hanover said she was going to take me home before the Marauders attack. Now, during all of this, Dr. Hanover tries to play it off like, okay, the Marauders attacked, so I was trying to get Nate to safety. And all of the X-Men believe her. Jean tries to read her mind, and she's like, Dr. Hanover has a lot of psychic defenses. I wonder why. But then she doesn't actually pursue that at all. But anyway, she tries to pass it off like, oh, I was just trying to save Nate's life. Except that she was trying to get Nate out of there before the Marauders attacked Christopher Summers' home. So that's a little bit weird. You would think that Nate would have brought that up to his dad, but I guess in all the excitement he forgot. Okay, fine. I don't really know why the Marauders even need to attack. Why couldn't Dr. Hanover just quietly take Nate and get out of there? You didn't really need the Marauders there to cause a diversion. In fact, the only reason that your entire plan failed is because the Marauders were there attacking, and then the Starjammers and the X-Men were there to repel their attack. If you took the Marauders out of this equation, Dr. Hanover probably would have been successful getting Nate out of there. But anyway, during all this, one of the Marauders actually tries to kill Dr. Hanover, and somehow she doesn't say, hey, screw that Mr. Sinister guy. He tried to have one of these guys kill me. I'm not working for him anymore. But at the end of this story, Mr. Sinister, he's like, well, oh well, I failed, but I'll try again. And Dr. Hanover, she's going to ingratiate herself with the X-Men. They're going to think that she's her ally, or she's their ally, and then she'll try again later. Why would she try again later? You tried to have her killed. She has no reason to work with you anymore. So anyway, that is the basic plot of this. That's 90% of this book. Mr. Sinister has an evil Wolverine clone. He basically has all the anger and rage of Wolverine, but none of the honor. That's something that Kitty Pryde says, which, by the way, have I mentioned recently how stupid it is that Fabian Cortez touching Kitty Pryde and Wolverine, and somehow giving Kitty Pryde some of Wolverine's powers and one of his claws? That's really stupid. I just wanted to mention that real quick. Also, it's really stupid that, and this is something that's been mentioned in a couple of volumes, apparently Kitty Pryde now, when she thinks in Japanese, and it actually is a struggle for her to speak in English. That's really stupid. Wolverine did not naturally speak Japanese. That was a language that he spoke. That was not his native language. There is no reason that Kitty Pryde should, by default, think in Japanese and without trying, speak in Japanese. That's really dumb, especially since that is not how Fabian Cortez's powers work. I just want to keep mentioning how dumb that is until this series stops doing it. But anyway, so the Wolverine clone, Gambit thinks that he kills it, and then, spoilers, it's not really dead. Just because your good Wolverine is dead doesn't mean that the clone is necessarily dead. Gambit says, oh, don't worry, he's dead. Maybe, like, cut off his head and then throw it into the sun or something. You know, make sure that the thing is actually dead, the thing that's trying to kill you. But anyway, this Wolverine, he is going after Kitty because he wants the claw back, which is stupid because it wasn't his claw, it was the real Wolverine's claw. And so it's chasing Kitty and Storm, who are in Japan, and that's where we find out that Mariko is part of the consortium. And then this Wolverine maybe dies, or maybe he'll be back. Who knows? He'll probably be back. But also, this keeps rambling because I've got a lot to talk about here. Apparently, we're now setting up a weird, gross, disgusting romance between Gambit and Kitty Pryde. Now, one time, Chris Claremont complained about Warren Ellis accelerating Kitty Pryde's age so that he could put her and Peter Wisdom in a romance together in Warren Ellis's Excalibur run. Apparently, Kitty Pryde was roughly 15 or 16 before Warren Ellis's Excalibur run, and then Warren Ellis said, no, she's 21, it's totally okay, she and Peter Wisdom can be a couple. And then Chris Claremont did not like that, so after Warren Ellis's run, Chris Claremont said, no, she's 16, which, once you get into the early 2000s, she's back to being in her 20s, but whatever. So anyway, here we have Kitty Pryde possibly being in a romance with Gambit. Gambit is thinking about her, she's thinking about him. Nothing actually happens except a couple of 12 almost kisses, but it's still really gross and disgusting because Gambit is a grown man and Kitty Pryde cannot be any older than 16 here. This is picking up right where Chris Claremont left off in 1991. That's way before Warren Ellis's Excalibur run, and if Claremont has a problem with Warren Ellis accelerating Kitty Pryde's age so that she can be with a gross, disgusting old man, then he shouldn't be doing the same thing here in this run. And I kind of see what he's doing. He wants things to be different here than they were in the main timeline. In the main timeline, Rogue and Gambit are the Ross and Rachel. They've been together on and off for, 30 years now, so he doesn't want to go down that path. So instead, he puts Kitty Pryde and Gambit together. It's really weird and gross. I don't like it. You already had Gambit as kind of the big brother figure to Storm, and that's different enough from the main timeline that you didn't also need to saddle him with a pedophilic relationship. I don't like it. Maybe they're not going to go in that direction. So far, all the romances in this series aren't really going anywhere. Rogue kind of has a tender moment with Spider-Man. Obviously, that's not going anywhere. Beast and Jean, that didn't go anywhere. Wolverine and Jean, that didn't go anywhere. Dugan and Sabretooth, that hasn't gone anywhere so far. So maybe I don't have anything to worry about, but it's still really nasty, and I don't want to see that in this book. So anyway, overall, I think that this book is kind of a big waste of time. You have this plot that ultimately doesn't really go anywhere. You've got a whole lot of subplots that are simmering that don't go anywhere, and I'm really worried that this series is going to end with all of these subplots up in the air and nothing being really resolved. So we will see. That is my rough thoughts on X-Men Forever 2, Volume 2. I have one more volume of this series to talk about, so we'll see. The stakes are pretty high. I hope that they can at least stick the landing, if you will. I really hope they do, because overall, I've been enjoying this series. There have been some ups and downs, but I've been enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would. So I really hope that this series concludes with a decent landing. So anyway, those are my thoughts here. I hope that you guys liked this video, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I'll be back later in the week with other videos. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.